Amber, I have your performance review from your supervisor here.
Great. What does this mean? Strong contributor?
It means you're reliable, and you'll definitely be getting more work.
Okay. What about this? Great under pressure?
It means you panic quietly to yourself. So you're going to be brought in on all emergencies and any last-minute hot requests. Of course, in addition to your day-to-day work.
Okay, I'm really scared to ask, but what about challenging at times?
Oh, it looks like you asked a question a couple of years ago.
And
you never recovered from that.
Wait, so none of this is about my actual work?
Oh, no, this is about reputation. Boop. Hey! Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Sanity Pending Podcast. I'm Holly. This is Amber. And today we are talking about workplace reputations and how they can sometimes be about more than just performance and how well you do your job. And Amber, this is another one of those topics that have come up in previous episodes. So I'm glad we're finally getting around to talking about it.
Yes, agreed. And just when I think of workplace reputations, I'm thinking about this, I guess, helm that I feel like I am operating under. So I don't know if that's how you see it as well, Holly, but that is certainly something when I hear workplace reputation, I'm like, ooh, this is like how I'm represented and I need to uphold this.
Yeah, so that's really interesting, Amber. So then workplace reputations for you. So is that something that you're actively trying to manage, or is it something you don't think about, or maybe you only think about it when it shows up in how people treat you?
Yeah, I'm only thinking about it when it shows up in how people treat me, right? Like I thought I had a reputation of being trusted. Why am I being questioned in this way? Like it's fine that you're asking questions, right? But or if I or in those instances, right, that I am human and I make a mistake, like trust that I part of my reputation would be that you know that I'm going to resolve that mistake, right? So I think it only comes up for me, and I only think about it when it's in question or when I feel like it's possible I may lose that good reputation because of something. Like maybe there's something like I don't actually know where the line is of how egregious is an action before you lose your reputation that you like. I didn't intentionally build, but maybe I did.
Yeah, I always thought about that too. Like, is it harder to gain a reputation? Or like, is it easier to gain a reputation versus lose a reputation? Do you know what I mean? Because I always figured it's harder to gain trust for sure. And like, like, is it one mistake and you're done? Like, it's gone? And that's never actually happened to me. So it's not something I can actually speak to. Thankfully, I guess I've just been really fortunate.
And I think I only think of these, like, I only think of a reputation now in the context of us talking about all these topics. And
that's so true.
Like, looking at the patterns or looking at how I feel like I can reflect on how I behaved, I can understand how that behavior might have equaled a reputation. And then it feels like this is how I understand my reputation is. And it may impact my motivations for continuing a certain behavior, especially when we talked about boundaries and like maybe I won't set a boundary, you know?
For sure.
So it does feel kind of like a hindsight conversation.
Absolutely.
For me, not a in the moment conversation. Yet I am aware of the things I'm doing that I know are well received. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, because I've really only thought about this because of some of the other topics that we've covered in previous episodes. I know I've shared previously that, I'm a people pleaser. I do think being a people pleaser helped to build my workplace reputation, but I also think that slowly it started to hurt me, to be honest, because on paper, like my reputation looks great, right? I am reliable. I'm easy to work with. I get things done. I never pushed back. I made everybody else's job easier. So it looks really good, right? But what that really meant was that my good workplace reputation, to use what you brought up in a previous episode, it was all based on access, right? So it was all like people had unlimited access to my time, my energy, my availability. And over time that turned into burnout. So, and I know when I did start setting boundaries, initially it was sort of initially received as I went from being helpful to sort of being, I don't know what you would call, like less flexible, maybe would be like a kinder way to put it. And I think that initial reaction, that's when a lot of people pull back, right? They think, oh, well, if I start setting boundaries, it's going to hurt me career-wise. And maybe I was just really fortunate, Amber, but I noticed that that initial reaction was very short-lived, and my reputation remained even after I started setting boundaries. You had to hold firm, right? The benefit then is that people eventually, they didn't just expect my help. They started asking me for my help. You know, it was worth the stress that it took to kind of set those boundaries and think about those things for sure.
Yeah. Couple things that as you were talking, that came up for me were like, I wonder if that reputation is really kind of tied to how we feel about the reputation. So for instance, if we care about what our reputation is, right, then that attention that we give it, it has the ability to potentially be lost, right? Because we care.
Yeah, we
but
do
if
care.
you kind of reach a point where, as you're talking about, a little bit of that reputation care goes away when you set those boundaries. So then I wonder if the lack of care and the importance of that reputation, when it goes out the window, does it no longer matter? So then who's really holding the space for the importance of the reputation? The individual or the people around them? Because if I get to the place, right, where I'm not caring about it and I'm like, I don't care what they think about me, like, and you're not tuned in to whether that reputation matters.
Yeah, that's really true. I guess that makes me think of like the difference then between like your personality characteristics and like your actual workplace reputation, right? Because like I consider myself to be somebody who's very unbothered by things and not, oh, so-and-so doesn't like me. Like, no big deal. Like in my personal life, right? But like your workplace reputation, it's all these like stories people tell about you, right? It's how they see you, whether or not it's true or not. It may not have anything to do with like your actual personality. It makes me think about that. So it's like maybe that, hey, I'm going to start establishing some boundaries here. I'm really burnt out. I'm just, I no longer have capacity to just always say yes all the time. Maybe that was really like my real personality, like shining through for a moment of like being unbothered by sort of what other people thought and just trying to protect myself. Yeah, that's really true.
Prioritizes for you what in your people pleasing mode, like, and in mine as well, like it prioritizes what is important for my environment to be. Rather than kind of like what I want. Because if I think about asking the hard question, it's like, okay, so if I know that I was doing it for all these other purposes and it eventually led to a burnout situation, what would I have rather had happen instead? And I don't actually know because it's so addicting to be needed and useful in an environment. So
what is it about that? Like, I need to know because I need to kick that too. Yeah.
Right. Like, but I can't even imagine or even think about like, if I'm not doing the thing that is needed, right?
Right.
And I'm not participating in the way that I understand is required or for that moment or for that time, then what am I doing? Like, I think it's so ingrained in me that I can't even imagine situations where I'm not going to do the thing that's needed to be done. And just like, is it a hands-off approach? Is that another extreme? Like so many questions that I don't have the answer to.
Yeah. Oh my God. So like that whole like wanting to be needed and wanting to feel necessary and things like that and kind of being the go-to person. I don't know why, but it makes me think you probably know, Amber, like on our very first video that we posted about burnout, somebody left a comment. They were always given the difficult clients because they were really good at handling them. And like on the surface, that sounds great, right? It sounds like a compliment, like you're competent and you're trusted, right? You're trusted with the difficult clients. But I think in their case, what actually happened is that the skill that they worked hard to develop quietly kind of turned into a burden that they were now expected to carry for everybody on the team, because being the person who can handle the hardest situation often means that, you're absorbing more stress for these individuals, the additional emotional labor, more risk, and all of that without ever having other things sort of no adjustments to your workload, maybe adjustments to other expectations in the office and things like that. So, but it makes me think of that sort of like that need, or not need, but just sort of like, it sounds nice to hear people say, man, you can really handle like the toughest situations, the toughest whatever. And it sounds nice. But it's almost like it's also a burden, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, you want to give credit for the intention behind the compliment.
I want to get credit, but I don't want to get saddled with it every single time just because I did good work. Yeah, exactly.
Correct. Like what is it that they say, that the reward for good work is more work?
Yes, we've said that. We've said that before on here. Yes.
Like, I just like, right? Like, why? Like, why can't I have a reputation that is, I am just going to do my job? But yet that reputation is a negative one. Yeah. Because I have even caught myself saying, well, they just do the bare minimum, right? Like, they're not really contributing. But when compared to me, who's doing so much more than I needed to be doing and not setting really good boundaries for myself, I was part of that problem of making like the management of workload that's good and better for myself to be a bad thing. So I can 100% look on that and go, ouch. Ouch. I wish I would have had this lesson ahead of time to have supported that approach, right? Like, there's one thing to be not contributing. And then there's one thing to be contributing exactly what you need to be contributing. Yeah. And I was definitely on the side of like, if you're not participating in this extra stuff, right? Because I could not see past that. And I can absolutely understand how by doing that, I inadvertently made an environment that created shame for others, that they couldn't do, weren't willing to do, constantly being compared to my actions and I am devastated by that now. At the time, I was like, well, or you could just, figure out what works for you on doing. But because that's not my problem to solve, right? But where I needed coaching and where I needed help that I did not know that I needed was how to temper and manage how much that I was doing.
Exactly. I've had that too, where it's like, it's not that I can't do the work. It's just like when you get into this, this reputation for always saying yes all the time, like, people just expect things. They're not asking you for anything anymore. It's always an expectation. And there's never nobody's ever checking in on you, checking in on your capacity, anything like that, which is why like the boundaries episode was so powerful for me, because it was like, yes, I learned the hard way that nobody else is going to save you from these things that kind of like you do to yourself, almost like you overextend yourself because you think, at the time, you think like it's expected. People expect you to go the extra mile. But that should be like, people should be grateful for those things, like, compliment you on going above and beyond, but that shouldn't be the expectation. So sorry, not to go off on like a tangent or whatever, but it like really makes me think of that, because I know how challenging that is in the moment to think of those things. And a lot of that stuff is hard learned lessons, Gosh.
Right? And it's like, this is me on a hamster wheel, right? And I can't, I can't get off the ride.
I know. God, it makes me think of like, and then the hamster's going around, like, because it's like, I can't keep it up.
My legs are no longer moving.
Flung around, yes.
I just keep, Okay, so then you started out asking this question around, effort around reputations as like, earning your reputation, losing a reputation. But then I'm curious, have you had any experience changing your reputation? Like,
not really. I guess like the example that I gave of like sort of like being this people pleaser who like people saw it as a way of getting unfettered access to me, you know? And so for me, I think it was more about like not changing my reputation. I still wanted to be known for being helpful, reliable, all of these things, but I wanted to put some boundaries around it. Now, that being said, though, I will say one thing that's really funny, and I hadn't really thought about it until I just started saying this, is like I have known, and this is not about me, but I have known people who have reputations. I may have shared this actually of being like an SME, being a go-to, being like the one who knows all the answers. And then you go to them and they don't actually know all the answers. So they have this reputation that is not accurate at all, but it benefits them.
Right.
I'm like, how did that happen? Like, have you had that? Have you ever had like an incorrect reputation that benefited you, like in just some way but it was like not accurate at all?
I'm not sure it benefited me, but it definitely made me go, huh? How do you maintain that? Yeah. Like, if this experience is the complete opposite of what I thought that I was going to be getting, then how do you maintain that? Which then kind of feeds into that question of once you have it, how much does it take for you to lose it?
Or in how much of your reputation is like built on likability, being liked by other people? Do you know what I mean?
Certainly been in scenarios where it's like, ooh, right? Oh, I've heard a lot about you. Or like that whole phrase, your reputation precedes you, right?
Yes.
And it's just like, okay. And that phrase alone lets me know that a work reputation is a thing. And if we were unsure of whether it was something that we were extrapolating or if it's a thing, that phrase alone lets me know that is a thing. And so that sustainment of how people get to keep a reputation related to their likability, I think is if you are personable and people enjoy, you don't create conflict for someone or a situation. Once you've done that kind of like work and a push to get you into that, whatever that reputation might be, then I think that likability is part of the sustainment package in order for that. But it's still confusing to me how I can know something about someone, having heard it. Right. Yeah. And then when I go to experience, I have this assumption, right? Because this is where reputations can be helpful, is that you don't have to have some conversations around expectations with working with individuals. Certain
people,
it's like the easy way, like any way that our brain can build shortcuts, it does. And so I don't see this any different, that having a work reputation that you don't have to explain, I'm on time, I do my work, I do these things. And you just have to hear this person is a really great, you're going to enjoy like working alongside them. Yeah. Great. I don't have to then worry about that. But then when I do have the experience where I'm worried, I'm like, how did this preceding reputation get generated when I'm not having that same experience?
Yeah. I know.
And so it does.
I was always curious about that too, because the couple of individuals that I know of who I was told, hey, these people, they're SMEs, they're great. Like if you ever have questions, you'll go to them. We kind of let them take the lead on stuff. And I was just like, why? And again, the only thing I could think is like it had to do more with likability than it had to do with performance and output and things like that. Because again, they're the social ones in the office, the social butterflies flitting around everybody's office and like, oh, how are the kids doing? How like knows everybody's stuff. And, again, I think it makes me wonder how much of that is at play. And I know for me, we've talked about it before, kind of like our own personalities of, we're naturally introverts, but our jobs have sort of forced us to be extroverts in a way, start up conversations, be comfortable leading conversations, things like that. And so you see these other people who are getting all these opportunities, who have these great reputations, and you're like, I need to emulate what they're doing. I don't want to get like down like a whole thing because I feel like I could talk about this all day too. But I recognize that I saw those things and I did try to recreate those behaviors myself in order to get some of those benefits as well, So
one last thing that I want to talk about before we get to our story is what are your thoughts around multiple reputations? Do situations create reputations that you can adapt to, or can you hold multiple reputations in like one space? What do you think?
Do you mean like multiple reputations as in like some of them are considered good and some of them are considered bad? Interesting. I hadn't really thought about that. I will say, so not to keep like bringing it up, but I was kind of the model employee. So I didn't really have many. I mean, I don't know of a bad reputation that I had. I'll be totally honest. I mean, I will say this. And this was going to be something that I kind of talked about post story, but I have like worked with individuals who, in my experience, were fantastic. They were like also model employees, people that I enjoyed working with. They held up their own, they could pull their own weight, could, do things, and I could count on them. Yet I know other people who said that wasn't the case for them. And my experience with those particular individuals, and it was like one or two, but they are not the kind of people who are overly social. So they don't have this big bubbly personality. And again, it just kind of gets me back to this likability factor. Like maybe they weren't overly social with the right people. They weren't rubbing the right kinds of shoulders. Do you know what I mean? And like, so people saw them as standoffish, or they're not going to pitch in to help, or like, but they weren't even asked, right? Like, I'm not going to ask you because I think I know what you're going to say already. So again, it just kind of makes me wonder how much of it is like, how well liked you are. Like the more I'm talking about this now, the more I'm wondering if that is sort of like the dominating piece of how people get a reputation, get assigned a reputation. But I mean, what about you? Did you have like two like dual reputations that you were sort of like managing, or like that you had to like navigate around?
Yeah. Yes.
Really?
I would say yes. I would say that again, it's that scenario that I talked about where I can now see that I created difficult situations for others because of my model employee from a supervisor perspective and from a getting things done perspective. But then from a coworker perspective, I'd have sarcastic labels, reputations, right? About being Pollyanna, because I like to take negative situations, because this is my nature, right? This is more of a character thing.
Sure,
but it is I like to take negative things and find out where the positive is, silver lining things, right? And so if there's a lot of change happening, for which there always was, I have an ability to be able to take that change and find out where there's a benefit for me, or where I can be excited about this change that's happening. And
that's
so
great, though, Amber. Oh my God, I wish I had that. Yeah, that's amazing.
But it's not well received. Yeah. Like I get labeled as like a Pollyanna, always trying to look for the right, and it would come with this sarcastic, and it's like, yeah, I am going to always try to look for the because that's important to me.
Yeah.
It didn't impact me to have that because this is what I believe. This is part of my values and belief system, right? But it definitely was not always well received when they just want to vent and you're like, but here's right? And so then it's not, so then you get a reputation for being always sunny and that's not always good, right? When you're working with people who don't appreciate that. And so there's likable things, like it didn't stop them from liking me, but it was definitely a very sarcastic way to say, I don't like that. I don't like that you do that. And though others may really enjoy like, oh man, if I just really need to feel better and, if I'm having a struggle, I know I can go to Amber. And so I feel like sometimes their reputation can be split based off of what people need from you. And so or what they need or are seeking or experiencing in their work environment. And so I also got labeled as the golden child, and people assumed that things were handed to me. And without recognizing or knowing how much work that I was doing. And so if they're not aware that I am operating at this like incomprehensible level to where they are, and then they see opportunities given to me, that's their way of looking at it. And me seeing that as going, I worked my tail for that, right? Like tail for that. And I had to put myself in places that were uncomfortable, and I had to do these things, right? And so without kind of understanding that effort, you can sometimes also get labels and reputations as being, so I definitely had Pollyanna, golden child, right? That had a negative impact with my coworkers because of how they saw themselves compared against me. But it was in conflict with me being an exceptional worker. And I'm not that's not modesty. I'm an exceptional worker.
You are.
That is a true story statement.
True story, guys. Story time. Story time. Stories. Okay. No, okay. So no hamsters were harmed in the making of this story. Okay. No.
Great.
No, but so we're back to another listener submitted story here. So, yep, I worked as a floor manager in a department store. And a couple of years ago, I went out on maternity leave. In the weeks leading up to my leave, I worked closely with a colleague to make sure they could cover my floor and handle the nightly paperwork that I completed for my team. My leave ended up being longer than expected due to medical complications. I was grateful that I was able to take the time that I needed to recover, but when I returned to work, things felt different. My unexpected leave extension didn't go over well with some people. There was this unspoken assumption that I'd been home with my feet up, living it up, instead of dealing with something very serious. The man who had covered my floor and supervised my team in my absence was consistently given priority when schedules were made. When I finally brought it up, I was told that he had reliably covered my floor while I was gone, and they wanted to keep what they thought was working well. So what was hard to reconcile was that I had always been the reliable one. I was trusted by my employees and by other managers, but during my absence, my reputation had been quietly stripped away and replaced with one I didn't get to choose, despite the fact that nothing about my work, my ability, or my commitment had actually changed. Sorry, this is like my feminist coming out, but people.
Right?
You know what I mean? It makes me kind of angry. It makes me really angry. So
I'm a bit irate.
Yeah, I'm going to do the famous Amber head tilt on this one for sure.
Right? I'm like,
I know. So here, this one, one of the things, like when I first heard the story too, Amber, this one really made me think about something that I have personally witnessed myself. Okay. So, again, that, we talked about it, but not all workplace reputations are built on performance. Some are built on likability. And specifically though, I think likability to people who are in positions of power. Okay. So like in her case, or, this individual's case. So you can be doing really solid work. You're meeting expectations, probably exceeding expectations, especially if you're one of those model employees. But you still end up with sort of this like difficult or problematic, or maybe like unreliable, needs to be out for medical purposes kind of individual, right? Like just simply because you're maybe also not overly agreeable to giving, not taking your leave when you need to take your leave or something like that. Or maybe you're just not socially aligned with the right people. We kind of talked about that.
Right, yeah.
And I think when specifically when somebody in power decides that they don't like you or they can't control you better, right? So if they can't control you, I think it's about control. But again, this is just on what I've witnessed and I've seen myself firsthand. When they can't control you, that dislike turns into a narrative that follows you. And now your work, your output, all this effort that you're putting in, it always gets interpreted through that lens. And I think we sort of talked about it in the, it was like the gatekeeping episode. I think this is sort of where that reputation, power, and trust all kind of intersect because the people with the most power also have the most influence over whose version of the story is going to get believed. You know what I mean? And, oh God, it's just like, it's infuriating to see that, like be on the outside seeing that,
To that point of who gets to tell the story.
Right.
In this scenario, it's the people who are present. And they felt maybe emboldened to tell the story that they wanted to have told because this individual couldn't defend, right? Or refute or show different behaviors that would talk back to this, kind of behavior. Because what I hear in this story is that it is nothing about the empathy that was needed for her in this scenario as a human being. It was they were inconvenienced that she wasn't there to do her job, and it meant that they had to cover for her. That inconvenience of them having more work to do, right, leads them to be like, oh, well, right? Like, that's a choice. That's
the selfishness is astonishing, and like the lack of empathy. Yeah, it's just as like, it's hard to hear that and not just be like seething with rage.
Right. And because it does not matter why somebody is out. That is not
and it's none of your business.
Business. That's right. not your business. Right?
Not your business.
None ya. It's none ya. Which I don't know why every time I hear none ya, I think of Funyuns. And I don't know if it's the onion
I was
part.
I was thinking of the blooming onion, right? That you get at the restaurant. I always think of that.
I can hear and read how she's impacted by something that she had no control over.
Yeah.
But where I really feel like that this is real nasty, right? Is that this was done while she wasn't there. Like this thinking because they were inconvenienced.
Yeah, I know. And one of the things too, Amber, that I always love about like our episodes and sort of like how you specifically, I'm not going to take credit here, but how like your approach with like the coaching piece, like there's always an emphasis on what we do and do not have control over. So like in a case like this, right, where someone's reputation is being shaped more by, we'll say likability or power. It's really hard to know, but it's not by their performance. We know that much because very clear had nothing to do with their commitment, their work, anything. So what would you want them to maybe like pause and reflect on before just assuming that they're the problem or jump into trying to fix themselves? Because that's probably where my brain would go, honestly, is like, I need to fix something. And it's like, I didn't break anything. You know what I mean? So
I would call what we're saying is a reputation that's built not based off of performance, like a signal system. And so if your workplace is operating off of this, your reputation is on this signal system versus a character verdict or your performance, right? Then having this topic talked about can bring to your awareness your reflection around what you may by default be broadcasting. And if you are just now thinking of any kind of conscious behavior associated with a reputation, to then that reflective work around what you might, by default, again, be broadcasting, and where you get the power is what you intentionally want to be broadcasting. I want to bring power back into this. And so power over yourself, not power over others or power over a situation. There is not much that you can do to change the behaviors of others. And you wouldn't want to. That's a whole sticky wicket, right? And so, but the power that you can have over yourself is to understand what it is that you want to be seen as and what it is that you want to be known as. So if you want to be known as, a good worker, then what messaging equates that behavior for you to have that. And then also, I think it's also about power in terms of what we talked about kind of at the beginning in terms of whether this is important to you or not. If you don't care what your reputation is, in this story, she does. She understands the value of reputation in her workforce. And you might have a situation that you're currently in that a reputation's important in yours as well. And how do you want to be seen and how do you want to be known? And I know that's easier said than done. And I know it feels like a simple answer, but that's truly one of the only places that you have the power is over yourself. And that whole Venn diagram of situations and then the out of my control and other people control things I can control. Right. And so that it's usually a small sliver in this whole model of things that we can actually control. And so, yes, there's stress. I get it. There's stress associated with not being able to control that your reputation is, gone in this other way. But it may take time, but it's kind of slowly building and figuring out the pieces that you can kind of put in place. Because I guarantee you the consistency with focusing on yourself and not worrying about others will give you more yield than responding to the naysayers. Because if you start building actions or try to retaliate, retaliate's a strong word for this. It'd be more like having a reaction.
That knee-jerk reaction that we've talked about.
Yes, and having a reaction to the naysayers is only going to kind of feed that you have a belief that what they're saying is there. And you don't want to do that. You want to ignore the fact that what they're saying has any power at all. And you're like, whatever, like I'm going to, come back into this scenario and be like, this is who I am. And I'm changed as a result of what has happened, but that's my personal life. And I'm here to do the job that I know that I'm here to do. And being consistent and staying true to who you are, because those are the things that you can control. That external negativity tends to find its own way out, or tends to come back and karma. I'll just say karma.
Yeah. Well, and I think you're right too. I think sometimes, like, depending, again, this one, you know, she said she's a floor manager. So this is like a job that you are present, like it's not a remote situation. So I think there's something to be said about like that face time to refute those claims of laziness, whatever it might be, taking advantage of a situation so they can get more lead, whatever it might, whatever the, you know, thing was that was flying around that changed her reputation from being this reliable, can always count on person to this new thing. I think that will, that in and of itself will refute that. Because how can you hear those things but see something different with your own eyes? I see like what they're doing, and it doesn't add up.
That my vulnerability around this is that I wish that I could offer a coaching reframe that comes with like the mind blown. Like, oh my God, I didn't think of that. And I didn't, you know,
it like clicks,
it just clicked. And I don't feel that there is one to begin. And maybe, I mean, like, absolutely challenge me on that, right? But this seems to me like one of those slow and steady wins the race.
Yes, I'm with you
models
on that.
Where it's you just have to be consistent versus there being a, oh my gosh, right? You know, I didn't think of this, or I didn't think of that, because and especially in this scenario, and I know that we've asked a similar question on another one too, but you could ask, like, who stands to gain by your negative reputation? So then it kind of gives you, again, as we're looking at it from all these different ways of this scenario and who you want to be in it, why does having a negative reputation like impact you? Like, or does it? Does it just hurt your feelings, or does it actually have a place in how you are seen, treated, right? And do you notice a difference? So let's say that they did come back and have this, and was there any difference in the nature of their work? Or did just a couple people kind of get snotty and that's it? And it just kind of hurt your feelings because they liked you before and now they don't, right? So like take an assessment of what this really actually means. And that's where you can get your power. If you can be like, I didn't really care that they liked me or not. Sometimes it really is about digging in. And sometimes it's just about kind of expanding it out and getting that, like, okay, where am I at in the whole scheme of this?
Yeah.
Yes, I have lots of feelings about this story and about what's going on. But having lots of feelings and emotions, does that really mean that it's important to me? Or does it just mean that I got my feelings hurt? Or, you know, or so sometimes there's work there for us to know, is there a fight or is there not?
Yeah. Like, what did I lose? Yeah.
What did I lose?
Did I actually lose?
Because if it's with coworkers that you lost this and you don't care about the coworkers, but you still have the respect of your employees and you still have the respect of your peers, what did you actually lose?
Yeah.
And then that doesn't feel as egregious to maybe, or maybe it still does, right? Like I certainly don't want to plant, you know, that what you should be feeling. But sometimes those emotional markers point us to what's important to us, but will mask and hide the bigger picture. Mr. Bingley is a big fan of our podcast. So if you are also a big fan of our podcast, make sure that you're hitting that subscribe button. And you can also find us on, we are pretty active out there in the social media lands of Instagrams and Reddits. And so look forward to some more engagement from us. And hopefully you will join us in that engagement. We love your comments. Please keep commenting.
Yes.
If you have any questions for us, if you have ideas, we do have an anonymous Google form that you can share your story, and it could hopefully turn into a podcast that we create a whole topic around what your story is, and that you want some engagement and dialogue around something that you've experienced.
Yeah.
We would love to help support that conversation around that, because that's what this is all about, is just kind of getting out some of these things that have been really hard to go through, and try to make sense of it, laugh about it, and then see how we can move past and beyond it. So we do have lots of ways that you can be a part of our very, very fun environment.
Very fun.
And get on the same wavelength.
Yeah, I don't know why I was like, oh, very fun, you guys. It's very fun. I don't know why I said it that way. I was like kind of embarrassed by that. I might have to cut that out.
Just know that if you haven't throat punched somebody this week, it's been a good week. And this is Sanity Bending Podcast. Did it out of order. Oh my gosh. Thank y'all for joining us. This has been Sanity Bending Podcast. I am Amber. This is Holly. And if you haven't throat punched somebody this week, it's been a great week.
Yeah. Bye.
I love fishies because they're so delicious. Go fishing.
Oh yeah. What's that from? Oh, is that from
commercial
Goldfish?
I think it's a goldfish.
Okay, Amber, you got a thing. You got something stuck in my head. It has nothing to do with goldfish, but Amber, here we go. I have a structured settlement and I need cash now.